All right, all right. What's up, everybody? James Corbett here with Project Refit. So today we have Doug Bradley with us, and Doug Bradley's a Vietnam veteran. He's got an interesting story he's going to be sharing with us, and we're also excited because this is the first Vietnam veteran that we've had on FML. Dan pointed that out. Very happy he did.
Quite an honor.
Yeah, it is genuinely an honor, and it's going to be really cool to be able to talk to you today, Doug. So as always, I like to give quick updates on Project Refit, what's happening, what's going on. So we just got back from Louisiana. As you guys know, we're camping out on the levee. We had a couple of times where the police officers were called on us, but thankfully we were helping out a cop anyway, and they were shooed away. And then once the news came out that we were building a roof, the neighbors came out of their homes and started to say hi to us and started helping us build. It was amazing how that works. Go America. And genuinely love that actually. But, we have car cruise coming up in a couple weeks, August 15th. We're actually going to be honoring and helping a family in a town. We actually already helped them raise over $35,000 for their father and son and brother and husband who took his own life, sadly, a couple of months ago. And succumb to the demons, I guess you could say. But we're bringing it back to that town, that neighborhood, to show them that we're still here, we still care, and we still want to help out in any possible way that we can. If we raise enough money, we're going to be giving some of that money back to the foundation that was founded in his name. And then we have a cornhole tournament that we're looking to host, Summers Point, New Jersey. That's right near Ocean City. So if anybody wants to come out to that, please let us know. And also, September 18th, we're doing a Halo Ball. Everybody's got to show up for that. It is a gala being hosted on our behalf. It is hosted by SJYPA, South Jersey Young Professionals Association, September 18th. We'd love to see everybody come out to that and help out. We're still looking for a title sponsor. So if somebody knows someone or a corporation wants to donate $10,000, let's go. We're looking for you. But bottom line is we're here today to talk to Doug, and I really want to hear Doug's story. So Doug, go ahead and take it away, brother.
It's great to be with you, brothers. Thank you. And keep up the good work. I mean, just what you talked about, the families you're helping, the communities you're building, it's really important. And I got to say, as a segue, I spent a couple summers growing up. I was born in Philadelphia. In Ocean City, my family, a couple cousins, my mom's brothers and sisters had a place in Ocean City, but Ocean City was dry, so you had to go over to Summers Point if you wanted to drink. So there was many a pint raised at a place called Your Father's Mustache in Summers Point. So good luck with. I hope everybody shows up and you guys have a great evening. Yeah, well, there's lots to talk about, and I hope you and the audience, you guys will come at me with some questions. But I think, again, it's the connections between Vietnam and and Afghanistan and Iraq are regrettably too strong and too accurate and too relevant. But, for me, as you probably know, or some of you are probably too young to know, it was an absolutely crazy time in this country. I used to call the Vietnam era America's second Civil War, but maybe we're in the third now. We sure as hell didn't get over the first, and that's what it was like during that era. And a guy like me, we had a thing called the draft. And so what we did was, it was a sort of a carrot and stick thing that Selective Service had set up. If you choose to get an education, you can get a deferment and not go into the military until perhaps you're done with that deferment. The stick was, if you don't want to get an education and you're not sure you want to do with your life, we're going to come and draft you, and you're going to have to serve your country, which frankly I think more Americans should be doing rather than the 1 or 2% that are doing it in the military these days. That's another conversation. So here I was, a kid. I grew up in the inner city of Philadelphia. My dad was a World War II vet. And I think what a lot of people need to know about the Vietnam era is we were all sons of World War II dads. And they came back. Their way to be back home was to reunite with their loved ones, their wives or their girlfriends, and go crazy and get back to living and have kids. And so there were a ton of it. There were 27 million of us eligible during the Vietnam era for the draft. And what a lot of people don't know is that more than a third of us served. Everybody thinks people like the former president got 4 or 5 deferments. No. A lot of people served. Elvis Presley. They tried to draft Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. Point was, service was part of the ethos that we were raised on. So if our dads had stopped fascism in the 1940s, we were supposed to stop communism. That was the next big threat. Of course, what we didn't know that, unlike what Gertrude Stein said about a rose is a rose is a rose. A communist isn't a communist isn't a communist. And unfortunately, we didn't do our history. We didn't find that out till we got in a place called Vietnam. And so what was happening in the service then with the draft was guys like me. I turned 18 in 1965, but I got to go to college. I got a scholarship. I was playing a little Division III basketball. And so I went to a small school in West Virginia because I couldn't afford it. I was first generation. My dad he got his GED in the Army. We didn't have a college degree in the family. But first generation to go to school, getting some help from scholarships and Uncle Sam a little bit with a thing called the National Student Defense Loan. So I had what they called a student deferment then, meaning that I could, as long as I stayed in school and was progressing, I could stay until I graduated and keep my deferment. The crazy thing was, early on in the war, from in 64 to 68, if you went on to graduate school, you could keep your student deferment, meaning you could be golden if you were lucky enough to be a good student and get into graduate school. And I did. I got accepted into law school. But what happened in 1968 when LBJ said he wasn't going to run for re-election that night in March, he also said he was ending deferments for grad students except doctors and dentists. So I knew when I was getting done with school, and you're in college. I mean, you guys know what it's like. You're 18, you're 19, you're 20, you're having fun. You're crazy about music and girls, and you're studying a little bit. Life is good because you're young, and we were young Americans, and there were 27 million of us. But always thinking the war was going to end. It's out there. I started to know some people from my high school class that were getting drafted. I knew a guy at my college who got killed. And so it starts to get closer and closer to home because we all had to make that decision because Vietnam was there for all of us, whether you stayed or served, whether you participated or protest. It was the issue of the moment every damn day. So by 69, I'm thinking like this ain't going to end. And now even though I'm going to law school, the day I graduate from college, I lose my my 2S student deferment, and I'm come and get me. Uncle Sam, I'm yours. So I spent that crazy summer. And by then, it's after the Tet Offensive. The war is just absolutely out of control. And, we're not sure what we're doing there, who we're fighting, how we're fighting, what we're fighting for. And that was tough on the morale of the soldiers who were doing the fighting and dying, or again, eventually support troops, guys like me who were in the rear writing stories about them and what they were doing. And, it's like, what are you going to do? So I spent this entire summer, and I'll take a break here so you guys can jump in. I can finish some of this about.
Oh, Doug, keep going, brother.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
Keep on rolling.
I might take the whole time. So
That's fun. Listen, if you do, you do.
Yeah. So what happens is I'm out that summer, and it's like it's probably the worst time of your life because you're trying to figure out and you guys talk about for your life and that formative moment. It could have been that summer for me because here I am. I'm still accepted in the law school, so I can maybe go to law school if some miracle happens, and that's the dream. But I'm also staring at what the hell is going to happen to me if that doesn't come true, and it doesn't look likely. So for me that summer, it came down to the options were jail, Canada, or the service. And I don't want to sound like a coward or somebody who was not a patriot. It was just what it was at the time. I didn't want to get killed for something that I wasn't sure was the right thing to be doing, and that we knew what in the hell we were doing over there for all the 3 million people we had there between 64 and 75. So, as I thought about that all summer, and I sweated every damn day. I wasn't going to protests. I wasn't talking to recruiters. I was just trying to figure this damn thing out. Talked to a bunch of people, people in the faith community, people in the Quaker community, people who were, trying to get draft resistance. I mean, just what in the hell? How am I going to stay alive? That was the bottom line for me.
Yeah.
And so, as I thought about it, I didn't think jail would look good on my resume. It still doesn't, even though I didn't do it. Canada, we never knew they were going to let people come back into the country. They didn't have jurisdiction in Canada. So you could go to Canada and they couldn't go and get you. But who knew if they'd ever let you back into America? And I cared too much about my family and the people I was close to. So I figured, door number 3, the lesser of 3 evils, I'll take my chances. I'll just, I'll roll the dice, and the Army can do what they want with me, which probably means 11 Bravo, because, the guys that are signing up, even though they could screw around with your MOS, and when you sign, they got your life, brother. They got it. But the hope was maybe if you enlisted, you could get a different duty. But I thought, it's like, I don't want to spend any more time than I have to. So I'm just going to take my chances. And the crazy thing was, law school lasted about a week. I was at Boston University, great town, but, sleep in my car. I had no place to live. This was going to be a joke. I was going to be the guy in those movies about law school that's asleep in the class, and the professor always calls on him and makes fun of him in front of the group. So I passed my physical in October, and I'm scheduled to go in the Army in November. If I go in the Army in November of 1969, and this is another one for your life moments. If I go in November of 69, there's no doubt, because we still had over 300,000 troops in Vietnam, and we were still fighting on the ground, that I probably wouldn't be here talking to you guys. Because I probably wasn't going to be the best infantryman in the world. It's just something about me, maybe being a little older, a little too cautious.
The fact that you recognize it, though. I mean, it's the fact that you recognize that. I think that's I'm going to cut you off really quick.
Sure. No.
Just from I've seen combat. I've been in combat. So to have the mindset that I don't want to go to war because I don't want to die. That's realistic. That's rational. That makes complete sense. I'm sure there's people who would say negative things about it. And I mean, that means that's neither here nor there. If we're talking the big picture, the grand scheme of things, no, you weren't willing to throw your life away for something you didn't know what was happening, something you didn't know if you believed in it or not.
Yeah, and in basic training, that became so more important, because I didn't want anybody else to get killed because of me, because of my ineptitude or my caution or my, anxiety. So anyway, what happens is then that Nixon decides, he said, when he ran for president, he had a secret plan to end the war. And his notion was, it was something that Mel Laird, who was a guy from Wisconsin, who was his defense secretary, came up with, called the term Vietnamization. Hand the ground war over to the South Vietnamese army. They were called ARVN. Let them do the ground war. We'll escalate the shit out of the air war. I mean, we dropped more bombs on Vietnam, North Vietnam, than all the bombs that were dropped in World War II. Then all of the bombs.
No, really?
Yeah. And this is a place that's about the size of Texas, know? Yeah. No. I mean, you can still go over there and see. We laid waste to the place because this was the way we were, our superior firepower. This was the way we were going to get them to the negotiating table. Mm-hmm. And so, and the other thing he added was the draft's not fair. People like, President Trump and others, 5 deferments. Dick Cheney, who went to school here in Wisconsin, where I live, had 6 deferments, which doesn't mean, okay, they get out. But that means 11 other people went in their place because they make their quotas. They get those 11 bodies.
Mm-hmm.
They just
don't one person doesn't go. It doesn't mean that slot's not happening.
Exactly. So those 2 don't go. Yeah, but 11 other people go. Yep. People forget that. So Nixon sets up a draft lottery. And you talk to anybody from my generation about December 1st, 1969, And we only had 3 TV networks then in public broadcasting, so you could turn to only 4 stations, and they had this gigantic, ball. It's like when you win the lottery, but this isn't a lottery you want to win. And they had 366 little capsules inside this big thing, and that was everybody's birth date. And so the lottery now I'm eligible for, because they canceled November and December draft calls, and they scheduled the lottery. So I'm thinking, like, man, thank you. Somebody up there likes me because I made it. Well,
yeah.
My birthday is June 7th, okay, 1947. June, the day after my birthday, was 366. Which means I don't go. My birthday, 85. So, I'm going. I was mad at my parents. I said, couldn't you wait a night to have sex? What the hell? I might not have
one
gone.
Night.
Yeah, just one night. So I get drafted in March. But realize this, guys. If November, over 300,000 troops in Vietnam, upwards of 350, and a ground war. Yeah, a vigorous ground war. Yeah, it was even bigger when I was here, but it was different. March, I'm going in, we're starting to send guys home. We're standing down units. We decide, as they take the ground war, we don't need as many pilots up there. We're going to have fewer soldiers on the ground, which means fewer guys like me in the rear to support them. And I didn't know at that point yet I was going to be in the rear. That saved my life. It literally saved my life, because now I'm going in March, and just another one of those crazy breaks. I took those aptitude tests. Everybody sort of laughs about them, jokes about them. I was on a plane ride with a guy who was getting out of the service when I was going up to see a girlfriend in Buffalo, and he said, hey, take the test. They can affect your MOS. He explained it to me. And I was like off the charts, because I was a writer in college. I was an English major, and I wrote for the campus paper and the magazine. I just did a shitload of writing. And
you want to be an attorney, so it makes sense.
and I had this great, draftee guy and processing when he was looking at my test, and he said, we sat down, and I kept calling him sir. He was laughing. He still called me sir. He's young Spec 4, and he says, tell me every writing job you've ever had, every bit of writing. And so, my MOS was 71Q20, which is information specialist, and I was in Vietnam as combat correspondent. So another one of those moments of your life. So you spend, and you guys know what this is like in basic. Basic is basic. It is shit. You're scum of the earth. And I was only one of 2 guys in my platoon that was a college graduate. So every day, the drill sergeants were on my ass big time. College boy, college Joe, you got to sign up for OCS. You need to be an officer. That's why you went to college. Otherwise, you're going to be 11 Bravo, and your ass is going to get killed. And they said it in more graphic ways than that.
Yes. A little more colorful.
Way more colorful. But the crazy thing was that I knew, if I went to OCS, there was a more likelihood I probably would have gotten nailed, because, second lieutenants in Vietnam, and the way you just rotated guys, we didn't go over as units. They rotated you in and out one at a time, which was a shitty way to do that. But second lieutenants did not have a long lifespan, especially when they would come in and do dumb things with units that had been there all the time. Then their unit was, maybe out to get them.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy, I get this great, and so there we are graduating from basic, the last day of April of 1970. I get called out of formation. I'm not just with my platoon. This is a graduation. It's a big service that day. And guys with a clipboard, and he's picking guys out of lines, and he calls my name. Doesn't say a word to me, just tells me to go over to this building. And I go in. Guy didn't say, he just, Bradley, and he shoved some more. And I look down, and I got manna from heaven. Instead of going to Fort Polk, Louisiana, or Fort Bragg, or Fort Gordon, or some other shitty place, and for 2 more months of advanced training, I'm getting a 10-day leave, and I'm going to the Army Hometown News Center in Kansas City, Missouri. So I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
No, I mean, who gets that out of basic? And I go back to my unit, and everybody's worried about me. Brad's, and I didn't want to tell them because all those damn guys were going to be on a night train to Georgia and Louisiana and Alabama, and who knows if their names aren't on the wall, you know? So again, just, I mean, you're going to, you know this all the time. That bullet wasn't meant for me. It wasn't my day. People don't realize how fortune and fate and luck play a part in what happens to you in the military, no matter how well trained you are, no matter where you are on the chain of command. And those are my breaks going in March.
Were you this conscientious of it all back then? Like, did you recognize the severity of it and the position you could have been putting other people in, like back then in that moment, or is this over the years you kind of recognized it?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, that moment, is forever going to be etched in my memory as that whole year, 2 years of service and the year in Vietnam, which I'll get to. But I think it was just that recognition of all the blood, sweat, and tears of those 2 months, and how you grow and bond those relationships, and how much you laugh, because otherwise you're going to go fucking crazy, do something nuts, or you're going to cry. And that I couldn't go back to them and share my joy. I mean, here I am elated, but I knew I did not want to lay that on them because I knew what was going to happen to them. And I think, of course, that's become bigger over the years because, I mean, that's a defining moment in my life. I'm going to a different place. They tried to keep me in Kansas City. So I was there from May until the beginning of October.
I think that was pure empathy, though. You understood that they could be going over there, and then that's in the back. I mean, whether it would be or not, it's that you put yourself in their shoes. That's admirable, especially. I mean, in that situation. There's not a lot of people who would do that.
Well, I appreciate, but I think part of it is being a little older too. I mean, I'd been around a little bit more. It's not just about education. It's about, street savvy, about, just being on the earth for 4 extra years. The guys I was with were 18, 19, and, at least half my platoon, was from, Jersey, New York City, was Black, was Latino. This was, the people that were getting out of the war. And I'm not trying to belittle anybody who served in the reserves or the Guard. I mean, service is service. But in that era, that was the way not to go to Vietnam, because Johnson, even though when they needed numbers, when they could never hit their numbers, and they had to expand that draft and get bigger numbers every time, and there was still, when there was still a draft, Johnson was hesitant to activate the Guard and the reserve because he thought there'd be hell to pay. Because things were churning so much in America. We were working class kids. I was again an anomaly in that platoon. 2 college graduates, everybody else hard scrabble, different lives, and guys that really wanted to serve, wanted to be there, but a bunch of guys like, well, what the hell? Here I am. So I get the Army. I do this great stretch at the Army Hometown News Center. Realize there's no Army base there. So I only wear a uniform when I'm in the office. No guard duty. No KP, because we still did KP then. I mean, no Army bullshit. Really, because I'm working.
You're just doing your job the entire time. You're on a deployment, essentially. Really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, life was too good. But then, the computer in Washington comes down, and, they put all those MOSs in there, and, a bunch of 71 Q-20s leave Vietnam. So we got to take some 71 Q-20s from someplace else and send them over there. So, my orders came down in October, and on November 4th, I flew to Travis, and I was on my way to Vietnam. And, You guys know what it's like before. And honestly, we never would have done multiple deployments. I don't know how in the fuck you guys did that, because, the nightmare a lot of us had was having to go back to Vietnam, regardless of what we had to do for our jobs. So going more than one deployment would have been, I wouldn't have made it. I probably wouldn't have gone. And that was a terrible month, because everybody is either wishing you well or telling you're an asshole or telling you to go to Canada. Everybody's giving you advice, but nobody other than your family is like just holding your hand or, giving you a hug or trying to figure out what's going to happen.
How'd your dad respond when you got drafted?
This is a real interesting story. What I didn't know until right before then, and this is another great story, which I've written about it's in one of the 3 books that I've written about my experiences, 2 of which are based on music, which I hope we have time to get to. So you guys don't have to stop.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about the time. We'll keep going. It's no problem for us.
It was really interesting because it turns out my dad was drafted in World War II. I figured, everybody volunteered because, here comes Hitler and Hirohito. But I probably picked this up from him. It's in the Bradley gene pool. He was a reluctant soldier, and he got drafted. He didn't go in until late 43 and ended up in Madison at Truax Field, a base we had here. He was in radio school because after he jumped out of an airplane, he wanted to make him a paratrooper. He broke his legs. But he ended up in the South Pacific. And, he always says that, he was there and he was in New Guinea, and he talks about a typhoon they had there. And he didn't get out of the Army till 46. He was part of the occupying force in Japan. But you know what? You look back at that. Radio operators, shit. When you look at how they moved from island to island to island to get to, on the ground before they dropped the bombs to bring the Japanese into submission, it was all hands on deck. He would never talk about that. He never talked about what he had to do and what he saw. And I know it had to be grim and had to be rough. And I know it was probably no picnic being in Tokyo until 1946, but he never talked about it.
Yeah.
So, but he was, my mom, of course, would tear up, and he was sort of stoic about it. And then sort of the night or 2 before I left, and my girlfriend was still there, we were lying on the bed in my parents' bedroom. This is a crazy story because my mother had too many people over to say goodbye. It got really loud and crazy and, just turned out to what it shouldn't have been. Mm-hmm. So my girlfriend and I escaped to my parents' bedroom in the back of their apartment. We're lying there in the dark, just thinking out loud, just talking, should we get married before you go? So you had, because we could still do that. I'll be there for you, blah, blah, blah. And my dad comes in, lies down on the bed between us, and starts to talk about what he was thinking and feeling when he was going to go in and get drafted in 1943.
Holy shit.
Yeah. This was like an absolute, and
holy
I didn't.
Shit, man.
Yeah. No, it was, and it's in my book, Deros Vietnam, Dispatches from an Air-Conditioned Jungle. And I changed a little bit of that just because it was so personal and I needed to make it into a bit of a better story. So that collection is things that happened, but then I sort of, it's what Tim O'Brien calls story truth to make them, a little more applicable for people. But yeah, this actually happened. And then when he took me to the airport 2 days later, and I was late for the plane because I had forgotten my malaria pills, which you were supposed to take before you went to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. You had to go back home and get them. And then we got to the airport late, and he came in with me, and I was running with, to get to with my knapsack to get to the flight. And I turned around, and he had fallen down on the floor crying. And so it was great because it took the pressure off me. I wasn't thinking about me anymore. I picked him up and hugged him and told him I loved him. And part of going to Vietnam and something my brother and my father never had was my father and I had a bond then. And we would always have that bond because we had shared those moments about his worrying about my safety and not saving me from having to go overseas. It was a powerful moment.
It's transcending. I mean, the fact that you both got drafted also.
Yep.
That's a bond that cannot be broken.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yep. Yeah, it was just, and I never expected that. I mean, who would have thought anything like that would ever happen? Because so many guys I know, and we all had World War II dads, none of them talked about it. I mean, we were raised by a generation of PTSD fathers, because when you go back and look at some of the shit they were in and what they had to do.
What an interesting statement, by the way, that you just made, that you were a generation raised by PTSD fathers. Do you understand how powerful of a statement that is that you just made?
Well, and I don't want to. Yeah, I know that's painting a broad brush, but when you think about it, how did they process it? I mean, they rebuilt America. They came back. They had a shitload of kids. That's why we had the baby boom generation. Because hey, I'm gonna get home and have sex, and if I have kids, okay, I'm alive. But they rebuilt America too. They went back to work. I was named Douglas for Douglas MacArthur because, that was who my dad followed in the Philippines up to Japan. And so, but these guys, they had nowhere to go with this stuff. And they just sucked it up and went to work. And I think there was a lot of that there. So I get to Vietnam, and at first I get to Travis, and I stay for 7 days. And on Veterans Day of 1970, I'm on my Freedom Bird, and that's what they even call it on the way over. And I land at Tan Son Nhut, and again, the whole luck thing. One of my best friends from my office in Kansas City was at USAV headquarters, United States Army, Republic of Vietnam. That was at Long Binh, MACV, Military Assistance Command. Vietnam was in Saigon, but that was 15 miles away. But he was in the USAV information office, and I ended up right next to him. We both get there. And at that point, you still had a bunch of soldiers in Vietnam. So we had 2 units, command information, public information. And it's just who you replace. That's how you got the job. Public information guys went out in the field, did hometown releases, did stories on units, saw the fighting and the dying a lot closer than I did until later. Guys in command information, which is what they put me in, edited their press releases, edited the Army newspaper. It's called the Army Reporter. We had a magazine, a quarterly magazine. We wrote command newsletters. First assignment I had was to talk about how to prevent venereal disease in Vietnam, which I wrote for the colonel. We had a huge office. And here's the crazy thing about the war then. So the South Vietnamese Army are fighting the ground war. We've escalated the air war. We're sending, grunts, infantry guys home and other units. So there were just a ton of us. I mean, there were more of us and way more of us than there were guys in the field. They used to say it took about 5 or 6 guys in the rear to support somebody who was doing the fighting. They needed somebody to fly the helicopter. They needed somebody to make their meals. They needed somebody to write the stories. They needed somebody to do the artillery, etc. Well, I think it was about 7 or 8 by the time I was there. And I was a REMF, and you guys know what that is. It's a rear echelon motherfucker. And I worked for the brass, and I worked in an air-conditioned office. My hooch wasn't air-conditioned. Guard duty wasn't air-conditioned. When I went out, eventually did the stories, because as we started to send guys home from our office, we didn't replace them. So I became both command information and public information. So this is 70-71. Nixon said, we're going home. We're going to bring them we're going to have peace with honor, because we're going to bomb them into submission. And the ARVN, who aren't they were nothing like the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army. I'll tell you that. So they're losing the ground war. So the mantra of 70 and 71, and believe me, it's different war, different times. It's all circumstantial, where you are, what your context is. But then it was, nobody wanted to be the last GI killed in Vietnam. If we're going the fuck home and we're leaving this place, we got to get out of this place. Good title for a book and a song. I don't want to get killed. So don't make me do something stupid that's going to get me killed.
On the way out.
Yeah. And again, like I told you before, and guys are rotating. We didn't go over as units. We didn't come home as units. I go into an office, I got my friend there, but, I'm from Kansas City. Another guy comes in. He's from Indianapolis. Another guy comes in. He was in Alaska. Another guy's from Germany. It just, that didn't help. That rotation didn't help either, because you bring a new second lieutenant into a unit, and he's got a top sergeant, a first sergeant there, a staff sergeant who knows every nook and cranny of that area of Vietnam they're in. And this guy tells him, we got to go out and do this. And he turns to him and says, we've done that before you got here. We lost too many men. We don't need to go into that village because there ain't nothing there. And the guy says, well, I order you to do that. I mean, this is when things got hairy. This is when you had more fragging, which is a strong way of disobeying orders. But, the Army was losing control of things because, what the hell are we doing if we're leaving? So, and guys are still fighting and dying, not in as large a numbers. And the only combat correspondent killed in that war from our office got killed. It was my buddy Steve Warner, Warner. You can find his name on the Vietnam Memorial. And Steve covered the invasion of Laos, and we invaded Cambodia at the end of April of '70. We sent the South Vietnamese into Laos in January and February of 1971, and Steve went up to cover the story because that's what we did in our office through public information. And he stepped on a landmine and was blown away. And so, point being, there's danger every place, and that's the thing about a guerrilla war. You guys fought in them, Dan. You did. You don't know who's friend and who's foe. You don't know where the danger is from one moment to the next.
There's no common uniform.
Yeah. And it was, so you're always super vigilant and on edge, because that's just the nature of it. I mean, even though I'm in the largest Army base of the world, I'm safe as shit. I'm going into Saigon twice a week. I almost got hired by Stars and Stripes. I've got as good a life as anybody could have being drafted into the Army in that period of time. And yet, I still don't know what's going to happen. We were on red alert at our base 3 times. You're out there and you don't know if he's coming through the wire or not. You just don't know what's going to happen. But that was the kind of year it was. It was trying to stay safe, trying to keep everybody sane. And that's where music came in, because one thing the military did and what they understood was we were a generation defined by our music. Music is what defined us as a generation, separated us from our parents, and established who in the fuck we were. And they gave us music, out in the field. No, silence. That's how you stay alive.
Right.
But when you rotated back, and guys did, or when you were in the rear, as most of us were at the time, you had Armed Forces Radio 24/7. You had great cover bands at the EM clubs, Korean, Filipino, Vietnamese. They couldn't speak English, but they could nail a set list. You had Bob Hope. You had Nancy Sinatra, Johnny Cash, James Brown coming to Vietnam. You had guys in the hooch with guitars. We had music all the time, cassettes, reel-to-reel tape decks, and the Army let us have that stuff. There's a great book called a woman wrote, Meredith Laird, called Armed with Abundance, and it talks about how they tried to give us creature comforts and make us comfortable to keep the morale up. So if I'm listening to music and maybe I'm getting high, I'm okay. I'll still do my job. And I'll write the stories that they want me to write. So the guys that are doing the heavy lifting can keep doing the heavy lifting. So
That's
music.
So great, man. Can I just real quick? I'm sorry.
Go.
That's so great, because we were just talking to, there's a company that's moving up from Florida to New Jersey. They're in the cannabis industry. And I can't say their name yet or anything like that, but what an interesting thing you just said. Like, hey man, if I'm getting a little high, listening to some music, I can still get my job done and still, be effective as a soldier when I have to be. It's actually an incredible look at, the Vietnam veteran and the Vietnam War.
And again, hey, you talk to anybody who was there. Pre-64, pre-Gulf of Tonkin, 65, and when the Marines land in Da Nang in March, And then when things, we're going to be out of here in 9, 12 months. And then it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. And then you get Tet, and then it still stays shitty. I mean, it's like, it's going to be different. There's not one Vietnam story. There are 3 million. So I'm giving you mine, and the guys that I served with, and that was our ethos. I mean, it was so. And the crazy thing is, the Army, clamped down on marijuana when we were there, on pot, because they thought, we weren't good soldiers. We were doing our jobs. We're not going to smoke on guard duty if we're out in the field, for crying out loud, because you got to have your wits about you. But yeah, I mean, that was sort of the way.
Funny they were more focused on the weed and not the heroin.
No,
I think wasn't.
Well, hey, that is exactly. You're absolutely right. That was the tipping point, and this was one of the shittier things they did. Music was a good thing they did. Honest to God, they would go. I mean, and we're in the Golden Triangle there. I mean, and so this is where all the great, heroin in the world is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Burma up through the Ho Chi Minh. I mean, it's all there. So somebody's getting rich, goddamn it. Well, we're getting killed. And the crazy thing was that they clamped down on this. This is like mid to late 71. Our troop, we don't have slack troopers. These guys don't know what they're doing. And it's all because of these guys. This marijuana. And so they confiscated it. They busted guys for it. They would find fields of it and burn it, and they were wondering why all the troops are trying to get, downwind. It's the biggest bong hit of your life. And so by doing that, guys still wanted the release. And the thing about the heroin that was there then, 97, 98% pure. And guys thought, if you smoked it or snorted it, you wouldn't become a junkie. They thought you had to be like Frank Sinatra and the Man with a Golden Arm, and you had to inject it.
Mm-hmm.
And I met 18, 19-year-old kids from Iowa and Kansas who'd never gotten drunk in their lives, who were junkies because they wanted that release, and they thought this would do it. I mean, and they wouldn't become addicted. I mean, we should have let these damn kids smoke pot, for crying out loud.
I mean, yes.
And I don't, and not to say we had a heroin army, but if you look at, again, the stats from 70 to when we got out of there in 72, 73, the numbers of AWOLs, the numbers of less than honorable discharges, the numbers of desertions, the numbers of fraggings, the number of drug cases, it all just went through the charts because they didn't manage it. They didn't know what the hell to do. And we were, we were trying to get out of that place. So music and pot were really the ways, and letters from home. We couldn't text, we couldn't email. So mail call, letters. Some of us would go back up to our office at night. We're in there 12-hour days, but we go back to the hooch, we'd grab a little supper, and we'd walk the way back up to the office, through the back roads, smoke a joint, get to the office, get out our typewriters, get our headsets on, put our music on. If somebody had good speakers, we all listened to the same album at the same time. Sometimes we'd listen to and we'd write letters, we'd type letters home, and we'd walk back. Yeah, if we were on guard duty, and you walk back to the hooch that night. That was our entertainment.
Mm-hmm. So you, because I know, so obviously I wasn't drafted. I volunteered for it. And I went to Afghanistan with my whole company, my whole battalion. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You went by yourself, essentially. Yep. You met up with units, but you went by yourself. So in the long run, do you think that was more detrimental than not going with an entire unit? Or do you think just because that happened to kind of like a lot of people in that area or in that time, that in itself created camaraderie?
I think we needed all the brotherhood we could get. I mean, and again, you had guys there was a GI resistance movement in the military going on. There were like, GI newspaper, basically, pushing back, defying orders. You guys got to remember what America was like at the time. And when you think about what was happening with African-American soldiers, who were a larger percentage of guys who were in combat positions, cannon fodder, They embarked on a program. Then when they couldn't get the numbers that they wanted from the draft, McNamara said he had an affirmative action program. It was called Project 100,000, and they went into the ghetto and the barrio, and they lowered the standards for entrance, the mental standards, the physical standards, the jurisprudence standards, and they brought in. And that through Project 100,000, over 300,000 guys. And if you look at them, the majority were Black and Hispanic, and they became cannon fodder. And that's where Black Power. I mean, you had really angry Vietnam vets and soldiers. There were some units, you got racism in America, you're going to have it in the Army. We all got guns. I mean, it was an absolutely crazy time. And so you needed all the camaraderie you get. I'd say the Black soldiers in their units had a lot more than we did, because they had a DAP handshake. They had greetings. They had a culture that got created there. We didn't, most of us white guys. But I think if I'd have gone over with a bunch of people, a unit, it'd have been a different experience. And I would have had some bodies to hold on to. Yeah. I think the way they had that rotation thing set up, and honestly, in some places like that example I gave before, it could have cataclysmic consequences when just because you're an officer or you have rank and you're coming in here and you want to move up, and become a first lieutenant or a captain. Don't come in here and tell me how to fight this damn war when I've been here for maybe 300 days and I know exactly where the enemy is and I know exactly what to do. And you might not get that in the unit, as much.
No, you do. I had that happen to me on my second deployment. We had a brand new lieutenant. He just got out of Ranger school. He was hot to trot. Great. I mean, he was a great leader also, but he was still new. And he was one of those lieutenants who the Ranger handbook is God. You follow that shit to a fucking T. Yeah. And it's not. It's a guidebook.
Exactly.
So we this one specific, we were on base. There was no threat whatsoever. It was training. We were on deployment though. And he was trying to, I forget what it was. He was trying to run this one thing. And I had my platoon sergeant who had been to Afghanistan like twice and Iraq twice. Each one of these squad leaders and platoon sergeants had 3 or 4 combat deployments on them. And the LT was saying, hey, we're going to do this. And they were like, sir, that's not, we've done that before. We actually have implemented this. That's how people die. Exactly what you said earlier. And they don't care. They have to learn it for themselves. It's one of those, you don't really know how, I don't think they realize the gravity of it until it actually fucking happens. And then that's character changing.
Yep. And, and like I'm saying, your units are just getting, it's even for the guys, somebody else is walking point now, somebody else is, has got the artillery. It was a dumb way. I don't know who came up with this, and who the numbers guys were. McNamara was famous for everything about numbers when he was with Ford, and he brought that into the Pentagon. But it wasn't working. And, it could work in a rear office like mine. Most of us were all college grads. We were writers. Sure. Just show me if you want me to do this story, you edit it a little differently, or I got to fill this slot, or this is the way we're doing the paper. But it's a whole different thing when you're covering somebody's ass and you're going to get killed.
It is.
It's amazing to hear you bring up Robert McNamara so much, because I feel like that guy's name is just synonymous with the Vietnam War. It's unbelievable. What kind of role did he play and his role play on you?
It's they're going through. They just went through that thing now. When why am I drawing a blank on the guy from the Bush administration that just died? Rumsfeld, Donald Rumsfeld.
Oh, Donald Rumsfeld. Yeah. Sorry.
They were talking about Rumsfeld, and his whole notion. What is it? The unknowing, the knowing the unknown, whatever. But McNamara was the Rumsfeld of that era, and the thing was that we always saw him at a map of Vietnam with a pointer, and he had all the data and information, and he would, and it was lies. I mean, see, you got to realize the other thing about that time is we trusted our government. We believed in what we were being told. We didn't think we were being lied to. The Pentagon Papers came out when I was in Vietnam, and that was an interesting place for a journalist to be, a reporter to be, when this broke. We found the same thing out with Afghanistan, but hey, did anybody break a sweat over that? McNamara knew early on. They had the reports. They had all the data they needed to know that we could not win that war the way we were waging it, and we were not going to drop a nuclear bomb on Hanoi, and we were never ever going to win that conventional ground war, and the South Vietnamese army wasn't going to win it. Yet what did we do? We kept going, and we kept going, and we kept going, and more people died, and more lives were lost, and money was wasted. And I blame McNamara because he knew better. He tried to gain forgiveness at the end. He joined the International Monetary Fund and would give poor countries money to give them an edge up. And he talked about like regretting it. It's a great movie that Earl Morris, a guy who went to school here in Wisconsin University, The Fog of War, 9 Lessons About War. It's about McNamara. And some people got on Morris and said he didn't ask McNamara the tough questions. He got McNamara, I think, to say what he needed to say, and that was he knew what he knew when he knew it, and he still sent guys out. I'm one of the guys that would go and Joan Baez got mad at Bob Dylan when he used to always sing, when he would talk about spitting on the graves of the guys, the masters of war. That's one guy I'd spit on his grave.
Holy shit, that's deep. So. Is that because of the fact that he just continued to push when he shouldn't have?
Right. Yeah. They were all in cahoots. And there's talk now. It came out because they released the tapes, Freedom of Information stuff after years, that Johnson had the same deal that Nixon got later, but Nixon had somebody on. He had basically a spy, an insider that was on the committee that was at the Paris peace talks, and they didn't want then Humphrey to get the bump from getting a peace accord. So they sabotaged the peace agreement that was basically the same one they got in 73, and they sabotaged the one we had in 68. And the crazy thing was Johnson found out about it because he was wiretapping the Nixon person that was on the committee, and he didn't want people to know he was wiretapping people illegally. So he never told the truth. He never released that information. And meanwhile, I think 27,000 more people died while the time Nixon was president until they got the peace accord. So they're all complicit. And I don't want to get too much into conspiracy and all this stuff, but it's like. There were many junctures.
Is that real conspiracy though, or is that?
I was going to say if there's like facts about that shit, that's real.
Yeah, no, and I didn't mean it like that. I just meant that they all sat down and talked. But from Truman on, there were moments that every president had, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, where they could have stopped it, where they could have realized. That these were not Chinese communists. This was not unilateral. These guys weren't going to come to San Francisco, and take over. That this was a revolutionary war, that was a civil war that had been waged for years, and these guys have been fighting the Chinese for 1,000 years before the French got there. That and then they started. Ho Chi Minh wrote to the presidents and said. He quoted the Declaration of Independence in our Constitution and saying, "Will you guys help me?" They all have roles, but when you started to just outright lie, and that's what they did, and you put people's lives at stake, and they lose their lives. I can't forgive you. That's inexcusable. It's not forgivable.
Is there hey Dan, when you listen to this, is there any parallel that you draw between I don't mean to throw it on you, but like the
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Yes and no. I don't want to I don't think the Taliban are going to come here, but who can say with that type of extremism, but being there without a direct mission, a direct goal, We like when I was in Afghanistan, there wasn't, hey, we're doing that. We were FOB security, and then it branched to we were actually doing combat missions and shit. There wasn't a set. So the lack of guidance, I think, and the now we did good things there. I like my platoon alone, my company alone, we liberated villages from the Taliban. So even if we were there for no fucking reason at all, I know some good came from it. That's how I can at least live with that and chalk that portion of it off. But no, it's very, very similar. I think they're, I don't see it. I don't want to say useless wars. Vietnam, I mean, that's a whole different story, but like the Afghanistan, I think a lot more could have came from that if it wasn't. It's kind of like one of those you're damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. But I definitely see a similarity between my deployment and Doug's. Yeah.
So the thing that I think about immediately is like, when it comes like Afghanistan, I mean, we didn't get attacked by another major terrorist attack this whole time. You know what I mean? Like There was no, there's something to be said about that. And I think that people need to remember that. That's something that, that's a difference, right, between the two. Vietnam, I never heard of it until Doug just mentioned how, they were fighting thousands of years before us, and they're going to continue fighting, past us, and it's like, that's an interesting concept, because I heard that even with Afghanistan too, like these tribal wars have been happening for thousands of years. But then when you hear about, well, we did liberate people who wanted to be liberated and have freedom in different villages and such. When it came to Vietnam, oh my God, like that's like it was a revolutionary war that has been waged for so long. So Doug, for you, what does that feel? I mean, like, how have you felt for years regarding that knowledge?
Yeah, I think, I pretty much said, I mean, you can't, there aren't words to describe it really, frankly. I think given, I mean, the 2 years of my life, certainly, at service in Vietnam changed my life forever. And, when I teach a class about music in the Vietnam War, and a lot of students, one of the things they want to know is, knowing what you know and how would you do it again? And, I say yes, because of what the direction my life went after that. I never would have met my wife. Wouldn't have the kids I have. I wouldn't be where I am, etc.
What a great way to look at it.
Yeah. But I'd say, for others, it's just, that wasn't their path. It didn't happen for them. And I think a lot of us just decided, to just bury that. I mean, there's the rest of your life to live. If you can get over that, if you're not totally traumatized or stuck in that experience. And, but yeah, I think the grim reality was, I mean, you still try and paint a brush about that, about, what our foreign policy was. No, it was a colossal mistake. And, too many guys had to suffer as a result of it.
Jeez.
So let's talk about your books.
Sure.
I just bought the one you said earlier.
Jeez. We got to get out of this place.
Yeah, I already got that one.
Well, I mean, here we go. So we talk about legacies, and and I think CCR said it best, which is probably one of the maybe the most mentioned band in over the course of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews my colleague and I did for that book and all the presentations we've done since. And I think part of that is if you listen to Fortunate Son, they understood who was fighting that war. Doug Clifford and Fogarty were both in the service. One was in the Coast Guard. The other was in the reserves. Fogarty ended up getting out early because of a hearing thing. But they understood what it was like to be in the service, and they knew who the person to the left and right was. And it's so, and they were the first guys that said, you can be opposed to the war, but you got to support the people who are fighting it, because that's the circumstance they're in, and we put them there. And that was, to me, that's one of the lessons of Vietnam. But the country was so divided, things were so screwed up, that war was such a freaking mess we're dropping back into America one at a time. A couple days earlier, you could have been in the jungles in a firefight. 2 or 3 days later, you're home on the streets of, Summers Point. You don't know if there's a Vietnam vet, anywhere around you, and you could be a fucking lunatic because you've had no deprocessing. You've had nothing.
The speed of war.
We've talked about that before. The World War II vets, they with the ships. I mean, it was weeks, months that it took for them to come back. Where us, I was home in 26 hours.
Yeah,
I was in Afghanistan, and then 26 hours later, I was in El Paso, Texas. It's there is no transition time.
Yeah.
Number one, our brains are not meant to see what the fuck they're saying. Number fucking one. Number two, you're giving them no time to process the unfathomable thing they just saw.
Exactly. It's actually a part of that conversation that we have. Something that's really important to mention is how, like, World War II guys during that time period, they're coming back. Those little conversations that they were having on the way back are crucial to their healing, where they were able to move on. Right? They were able to say goodbye. They were able to grieve a little bit. Whereas now Vietnam comes through and you're home like that. Yep. Guys these days are literally. Think of let's take it to special forces real quick. A guy could deploy. He's called in. He leaves immediately, comes back in sometimes like a week. He just goes and executes a mission, comes back. He's in his fucking backyard again. Like what? That's crazy.
No. Well, and realize what all's going on. We lost the fucking war. I mean, and it was our fault. So, and even though Cretans were saying what they were, and there were some people, including people that I worked with here in Madison when I got here, who believed that statement. There were still a lot of people who thought, we were part of the problem. We were the executors of that shitty plan, and so it was, and so that legacy, and shame on us as a country, because we didn't do the healing, we didn't do the listening, we didn't do the helping, and
you got to learn.
It was the complete opposite. It was a fuck you.
Well, and that's why, the best thing would be have no more wars. But if you are, because, they blow up, parts of New York City, and you're going to make them pay. I mean, we're at war. That, you help them. I mean, the nation supports them. Some of the best things we found in the course of the conversations were the ceremonies that tribes had. Nobody goes in the armed forces more than Native Americans. This is part of their culture. But when they come back, the whole tribe helps to purify them and bring them in. They have water rituals. They have gourd dances. We would have these great conversations with Native American vets. And sure, you're still going to have some of what you're going to have. That's never going to leave you. But knowing that community is going to help you to make that transition, that they have got your back and they want to help you heal from the horror that you've experienced, is enormously beneficial.
I think the majority of the issues with PTSD are the stigmas. I can function for the most part feeling the way I feel. Do I struggle along the way? Absolutely. It's the alienation that comes. Now, I don't give a fuck about stigmas. Stigmas don't really apply to me anymore. But for when they did, and for the people who they do apply for, hold on, there's a truck driving by.
We can hear you fine.
For the people they do apply for, damn it, fuck you, truck.
The stigmas, for the people.
Right, yeah.
Got you, bro.
Yeah. Well, that's essentially what I was saying. Yeah, the stigmas is the number one. I think that's the number one deterrent for a male veteran, a male combat veteran to get help, because you have all that alpha male shit that goes along with it. But that's what you said about the Native American. James and I read a book. I'm sure, Dr. Edward Tick. I read Warrior Soul, Transitioning the Soul from War. And in that book, word for word, James and I have said that. I'm going to say in almost every conversation we have, because it's crucial. And I don't want to say, I do, fuck it. It's society's fault, really. Now, we have a very large society, 300 million people. It's kind of impossible for everyone to get on board with that way of thinking. And we're starting to see with us, actually, that we're bringing that community back into that light. So they're getting to see how we think, why we think the way we think. our point of views of it, what we need to heal, what we expect from them, whether we expect something or not. If you know what I mean, there's all those little small intricacies to it now, and it's because of those tribal situations where everyone's feeling the pain. Misery loves company. That's really what it is.
Yeah,
Misery loves company. If you're feeling the same fucking pain I am, you're not going to judge me. I'm not going to judge you. We're feeling the same shit.
Yep.
That's been lost.
The fact that you bring up like the Native American tribes thing is massive because I mean it's if you think about not if you think about it, because I don't know how much you know completely about us, but one of the things that we're trying to do with our organization is building up these trucks and trailers to be able to begin to create these micro communities, because Dan's right. You can't change 350 million fucking people to have them all rally around, the military. You can't. It's impossible. But what you can do is create these micro communities where people can begin to do that for each other inside of their communities. Find the people, find the civilians, find the police officers, the firefighters that are going to go and support those veterans and tell the veterans, hey, I get you. I understand you. We can work together to improve your life and make you feel better, make you feel welcome. So it might not be like a tribal dance where there's poles being pierced through your chest and you lean back together and you fucking pole rips out and you're all feeling the pain together now, because modern culture, you're not going to do that together, right? But you can do something similar through conversations, and you can actually have that kind of that help and that support. It's literally a gargantuan mission, but at the same time, it's the most important one that I think an organization can take under its wing, and that's exactly what we're doing, based off of the leadership and the learning from history, right? Like it worked. I don't understand why a modern day warrior doesn't look back in history and be like, those guys fucking cried. Those guys were with each other. They hugged each other.
Because you base yourself off of the people who are next to you.
Yeah, but we got to look at history. That's the issue.
We base our, right, but it's history. I agree, yes.
And history teaches that the warrior needs to be the one that can step up and be like, hey, I am struggling, or hey, I need this from the community. Hey, I need this from people, and ask for that help and feel okay with it. And I think that's going to be one of the legacies that Project Refit leaves, is that we're trying to basically refit the community and to rallying around our warriors. I actually wanted to share something, great segue here, into Dan and I were out in California. I've shared this before on FML, but Dan and I were out in California, and we had it was a Vietnam veteran, as a psychologist, who was giving a presentation. And there was a guy from that era, his same age, basically around the same age, who literally stood up and started fucking attacking him, calling him a baby killer.
He was bitter.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was livid. Personally, and thankfully Dan was there, because when I started to stand up, Dan basically grabbed me, pulled me down, was like, hey, it's all right, dude. and like, they'll take care of it, kind of thing. But we got a taste of it, and it makes no sense to me. We're way beyond it. We have to start welcoming our veterans home, our Vietnam veterans specifically home. Every Vietnam veteran I say, I welcome them home. I don't even say thank you for your service. I'm like, hey, welcome home. You know what I mean? Like, and I say the same thing to you, Doug. Welcome home, man. But that's the bringing up the tribes is so critical, I think.
Well, and the point you're raising is, and like I said, America's second Civil War. So we were a divided country, and we've stayed that way. It's gotten worse. But back then, you had some of the vitriol that you just mentioned. So the crazy thing is, when we teach this class at the university, and we've just had to stop it because my colleague retired, and we needed a faculty member to get the class. But for the 8 or 9 years that we taught it, the crazy thing was we'd have the requisite undergrad kids, and we tried to keep some spots for freshmen that were taking these special courses. But 18 to 22-year-olds, if you're over the age of 62 in Wisconsin, since it's a public university, you can audit a class for free with the consent of the instructor. So we would have maybe 50 undergrads, and sometimes larger. And then we would have 30 or 40 auditors, half of whom were Vietnam vets, half of whom were anti-war protesters. And the amazing thing is that the music gets everybody to the same place, and everybody settles the fuck down. It centers them because everybody had the same soundtrack, whether you were there or whether you were home. We all had the same soundtracks. We all know the same music. Now we got different connections and intersections and catharses, with that. But shared soundtrack, and now that because you can access all the music. The kids, these are kids who don't even know if it could be the Peloponnesian War. They don't know anything about Vietnam. They know the music. They know it. They come in. They know who Marvin Gaye is. They know who the Doors is. They know Hendrix. They know Country Joe. They know Johnny Cash. But the music centers everybody. It's safe and it's honest. The music tells the truth. And we've had honest God, we've done over it's going on in the 200 presentations everywhere from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Stax Museum of American Soul Music, places large and small and places in between. We've only had one moment where that ever happened, where somebody got up and did that. And man, the crowd took this guy. He's lucky to still be standing. But that's what the music can do. And, and again, the sad thing is guys still couldn't talk about the experience. Nobody wanted to listen to Vietnam vets. Nobody wanted to know. And Vietnam vets didn't want to be identified. And so this is 20, 30, 40 years after the experience. We asked them about a song. We didn't ask them about Vietnam because it was still too hard, and now they're bitter and they're really angry. But we asked about a song. Boom, floodgates open. And in the telling of that song, and we had so many amazing experiences like that, where you would spend hours with somebody in their homes, with their families, that in talking about a song, they would get back home. But it's almost too late. Luckily they're still with us. They're still there. But what was that 40 years like for them? Shame on us. You don't do that. We can't do that. If you're going to tell people to go and do this on your behalf, to go kill somebody, you got to do everything you can do to help them to get back and regain. And you have to share in the sacrifice. You got to send your kids. You gotta not have so much money. You don't borrow the money from foreign governments to fight the wars. You share the sacrifice, and if you can't, then you don't do it.
I agree with that one. I can agree with that. Yeah, so I got the
Wow. Just real quick, I'm like, it's amazing to have this perspective being thrown out, because you did come from a war, and you said yourself, even, you were like, we lost that war and whatever else. And you're still talking about the healing, right? And you're still talking about the importance of community almost, right? And how it genuinely is up to us, like the civilians, society, to recognize we sent guys to go fucking kill on our behalf. Kill on our behalf. That's asking somebody to do. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate sacrifice. Whether you are, quite honestly, I don't care if you've survived or you died. There's the death that happens to everyone, right? Either physical or mental. And I have grown after working with so many veterans now, and even like working with Dan, even, right? And like, I'm not, something I've actually began to develop myself is like this callousness towards if you're not on board with trying to help, you can get the absolute fuck out, right? And I'm gonna protect what my guys, right? I'm gonna protect Dan's brain, everyone's brain that I possibly can from attacking itself, by making sure they're okay. And that's my duty. That's my job as a civilian, as a person that's running something like this. And I take it. So I think Dan knows how too, how seriously I take it. It's like, I'm here for you, that kind of thing. And I think that we can create micro movements, grassroots movements in this country of people that feel just like me. I know that we exist. I know there's people out there that feel like me. It's just giving them the opportunity to do that, right? Giving the opportunity to be a part of that mission and that movement. And I just want to say, like, man, I really appreciate your testament today, your stories, your teaching. I'm I'm blown away right now. I mean, it also motivates me even more to recognize and to kind of like, put my foot in more people's asses to be like, hey, we need to do this. This is needed beyond any other comprehension. This is needed now more than ever. Right. It's just the parallels between, Vietnam and Afghanistan now I'm beginning to recognize they're paramount. They're there. It's very real.
Well, and you're not just talking about it. I mean, this is talk, but it's great talk. It's substantive, but you're doing something, and I think that's the important thing. You're finding the places where you can make a difference, and it's not going to be one size doesn't fit all. We're not going to get everybody to participate, or both veterans and non-veterans. But what we can do to close that military-civilian divide, it shouldn't exist. Again, what we asked them to go and do in our name. We've got to get better at this, and people need to find the way that they can do that. Listening, even if we just listen, don't applaud, don't tell me thank you for your service, and that's crap. If you really want to know what it's like and what I did, you listen, and you try to understand, because you can never totally understand, but you can try, and that's a start, and helping to bring some of us together. But yeah, I think. I just think it's a stain on this country and what we say we exist to do, and what we are, that we do such a lousy job at this. That was the one thing, I think part of the reason that we had sort of at least a different approach to the last two wars, even if people didn't agree with them, and there were many reasons not to, that we weren't going to do to those soldiers what we did to us. But you know what? Applauding in airports and saying that shit you're not in my heart that way. You don't have my soul.
I'll tell you what, when I'm in a really bad fucking place and I'm fucking hurting, my brain does not go back to flying home and having people clap for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's honestly just not where it's at. It's a beautiful sentiment. Don't stop doing it.
Yes.
More has to be done though. That's a start. But like I said, when I'm raw, that's clapping is not. That means dick all to me.
No, right.
Something that I've learned from all this. The number one thing you can do is just like the idea of listening, right? I mean, I hate to be so cliche, but at the same time, it's not, because it's not. This doesn't happen often enough, right? Like, why? Just ask the question. Hey, why are you feeling this way? What's going on, right? Like, teach me what's happening. And I think it's up to the veteran to actually do that too, right? And I think we all can agree on that, because that's like, it's not. So society definitely needs to improve, but I think that because veterans are part of society, I think it's also the veteran's obligation to, when a civilian wants to learn why you feel and the pain you feel, he needs to teach, or she needs to teach why.
If they're in the place to, yes. But I also think it's a son of a bastard. Never mind.
Piss me TBI, off. Bro, crops up on you.
Piss me off.
No, but I think it is part of a relationship. It's both sides, but I think, I don't know, I won't speak for Dan, but I think and that is that sometimes we're made to feel, don't put all the onus on me. It's like, I did this already. I went through it. Now I got to teach you. I mean, and I got to find a time that's convenient for you. I think what you guys are doing is you need to have the environments and the context where this can happen. A podcast, your micro community, an event, a gala. Or just a song, a guitar lesson.
I think. Well, I got it back now. The TBI kind of went away for a second. And I wrote it down just in case it slipped away twice. Yes, everybody needs to listen, including veterans. But we have seen it so much. People are in a place, whatever place they're in individually. I got it, but very rarely do I see it where people are in a place to listen for the sake of listening. Yeah, most of these people are they're listening so they can respond. I have something too. Hey, look at this. No, it's but I'm.
Yeah,
You're discrediting what I'm saying now. Now what that was going to mean to me by voicing those words means nothing now, because you have now compared it and it's not mine anymore. You ruined it for me. That may just be the way I think, but I think a lot of other veterans think that way.
No, I wouldn't disagree, because and it's just it's such a basic skill, but it's something and we've gotten worse at it, because I'm gonna shout at you and tell you you're an asshole first, and then that means we're not going to have any conversation. And it's just it's almost basic that you do it, but we don't. And as you said, sometimes then people are thinking about, well, I'm going to show you that I can be where you are, so I'll share my,
or I can fix you.
Yeah, and that's not. Now just all you got to do is listen. I mean, there's a great story and we got to get out of this place where Marvin Gaye's brother Frankie is in Vietnam. He's not as lucky as Marvin. He had a good voice too, but he didn't get a recording contract with Motown. And he's writing letters home about how shitty things are, especially for, a black soldier in Vietnam in 67 and 68. Never thinking his brother, he's writing it to mom and dad, because we couldn't text or email. And Marvin's reading the letters. He cares. So when Frankie comes home, Marvin cancels the tour and he's there for him. And that's basically what he says to him. He says, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to probe you. I'm not going to question you, but I want to understand. So I'm going to listen. And, Frankie was tired of writing letters. So they spent about the first 24, 36 hours talking, basically Frankie talking. Yeah. And Marvin, when he got done listening to him, said, I can't paint a picture. I'm not going to run for office. I'm going to write a song. And he wrote an album. Listen to what's going on. Don't listen to an individual song on iTunes or Spotify, because they clip them, and if you listen to the whole album, what's going on, it's only about 36 minutes. The song, it never ends. The first song, What's Going On, loops into What's Happening, Brother. That goes into Fly the Friendly Skies, goes into Mercy, Mercy. And the last song on the album, Inner City Blues, which is just a punch in the face. The last chords go back to What's Going On. He goes, Mother, Mother, and that's the beginning of what's going on. And it's like, this is Marvin Gaye's interpretation of Frankie Gaye, Vietnam vet, coming back to America. He can't get off this loop. Who's there for me? Is God there for me? Is my family there for me? Is my country there for me? Am I going to do drugs? Am I going to go to hell for what I did? Or how am I going to get home? And it starts over again. That is what veterans deal. But Marvin Gaye listened. He got it.
Yeah, he did what we're asking for the society to do. He read his brother's messages. He knew what the situation was. He intellectually approached it. I'm not gonna, like you said, I'm not gonna fucking ask you questions and put you in a place you don't want to be in. But we're gonna talk. And then we talked, and he made first off, the fact that it's Marvin Gaye and that it went as popular as it did obviously helped. Obviously, but I mean, the fact that somebody of that caliber, and he canceled a tour, that's money. Now I know it's his brother, but that's still That's still very, very potent. That when this is over, I'm turning this on. I'm listening to it immediately.
You got to listen to the whole thing. And what's great is what you said, but because what it was. But Berry Gordy, who was running Motown at the time, hated this. Plus, there were political statements in there about the ecology, about the war, and Berry Gordy, and it was jazzy. I mean, if you listen, I mean, it's like that's nothing Marvin Gaye's ever done before or since. And so Berry Gordy said he wasn't going to release it. Yeah, it's like nobody's going to listen to this shit. And Marvin says, "Okay," he says, "if you don't release this album, I'm done. I'm not going to do another recording for you guys. I don't care if you sue me or tape." And so finally, Berry Gordy said, "Okay, we'll put the album out." And he said, "One of us is going to learn something." And he anticipated that Marvin, and that it became a smash hit. So
looks like he's the one who learned something, huh?
Yeah, Berry Gordy said, "Yeah, I guess I learned something." It's absolutely terrific. I know I've taken up way too much of your guys' time, and I do want to say that this is one guy, one Vietnam vet. There are 3 million stories. You ain't got time for all of them, but I'm not speaking for everybody. Giving you my experience, I have been fortunate enough from the days with Vets House to the other veteran advocacy, to the books, to the outreach I still do, to the Jason Moon album. this still means a lot to me. But again, I'm one voice. It's just me.
Well, your voice, even though it's just one, it's still very, very, very important and insightful. This is a point of view. One, yes, there are Vietnam vets, and I mean, I think a lot of podcasts they'll get we'll do it at some point. We're going to get combat, like infantry.
Yep.
But this is the side of the Vietnam War that you don't hear about. You know what I mean? It's a completely different. So you keep saying there's 3 million. There are, but this story was just as important as the other 2,909,000. All that jazz.
Well, and the work you're doing is vital. So, we'll be there to support that as well and talk about it and hopefully get a chance to participate even more.
Where are you still in the Jersey, Philly area?
No, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, you did say that.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yep.
Damn. All right. Well, listen, this has been incredible. I know that there's been a few people. I think we've had like 30 people that come through just in this chat alone or in this video alone. So I know you touched some people, and I agree with Dan. Every story matters, including yours and your experience. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you. Welcome home.
Hey, brothers, Dan. Welcome home. Yeah, welcome home to everybody. Thank you, brothers. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, man. So that's it for FML today. Thank you, everybody. And until next